Holy crap. Do we have a cool podcast for you? Mr. Todd Jarrett. He shot 6 million rounds over the years. He's competed in thousands of matches, one of the winningest pistol shooters. He's trained every special mission unit under the sun here in the United States over the years and all points in between. Let's dig in and hear some of the lessons that Todd has picked up over the years. Hey, and as always, this podcast is brought to you from Ignis Lux Coffee, craft roasted, small batches, made just for you. Check them out, Ignis Lux Coffee.
Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast.
Hey all, welcome to yet another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. Got a special guest today, Mr. Todd Jarrett. If you've ever attended one of our training sessions, you've probably heard me talk about Todd over the years. As you've got, how old are you, Todd? That's probably a great way to start. You've only got a few years on me, but you've got just enough years on me that I quote you in class.
I turned a big 6-0 here last year. So 40 years plus now of being in the competition firearms industry. Jesus, it's flown by. I sit down and think about it sometime and don't realize that I don't see myself as 60 years old anymore. I'm still doing the same stuff I was doing when I was 25. I mean, there's some things I'm not capable of doing anymore. Like I can't hear, I can't see, yeah. So those are the some of the downfalls of, just aging, health wise. I've kind of kept my body in really good shape, over the years.
I was going to say that to you. You still look trim. You still look like you move around real good.
Yeah, it's and I'm still competing on a regular basis. So it's just a way of life for me. I mean, it's where all the companies I work for and all the people I worked for in the past. For me, it's just been a pure pleasure working for the firearms industry. Everybody looks at me as a pro shooter, and I was going like, yeah, you could look at me as a pro shooter back in the day, back in the 90s. But there was this huge transition for me, probably around 2000, around 2000. And I had worked for companies. I worked for Safariland for 15 years. I came on with them back in the 80s. They put me on as a sponsored shooter. And then we kind of got into, development of products, not only with Safariland, but I worked for a company called Para Ordnance. I worked for them for 20 years. And then around 2005, I went to work and left Safariland and went to work for Blackhawk. Mike Knoll, who was, former SEAL, and Mike had been around a while. And for me, personally, it was a big step for me to come in to help them and promote, holsters and to law enforcement and more military, even though I did that for Safariland. Probably starting around 93, 94. So I got my feet wet in the government, law enforcement, military agency, along with, still competing at a high level. So, I mean, that was part of my job. And of course, they used us, Mike Boyd, Rob Latham, Jerry Barnhart. We were all, Doug Koenig, we were all on the Team Safariland at the time. And so those things just kind of transformed us into who we kind of are today. Everything as far as, new products and, advising companies and everything from range programs to bullets to powder, and all the connections I made in the industry. It takes years to do that, as you well know. I mean, it's just something that you really don't just do overnight. We have all these new so-called pro shooters coming out there. I just kind of snicker, along the way because, they're getting their feet wet and we need new blood coming into the industry, and it's great. But there has been, and there's just been this craziness about, especially social media. Social media has changed the way we do business as influencers, as podcasters. So I feel that, being involved in industries like this year's SHOT Show, when we met SHOT Show this year, is my 34th year going to SHOT Show, other than missing COVID, in 2020. So that was 2021. That was the only time that I actually missed SHOT over the years. And I think the NRA show is coming up here in Dallas in a couple of months, and that'll be I think my 27th NRA show going to. So I try to keep myself visible, but I enjoy the people. I just enjoy firearms. I understand, the people who have them. I understand the competitive mindset. The people who carry on a normal, just a daily basis, carry a gun, asking questions about, hey, Todd, what's the best technique for drawing out of an appendix or out of a pocketbook, or just mundane things that, you and I take for granted as people who handle guns all the time on a regular basis. So for me, I'm always just kind of like, trying to keep up with any new technique that may develop along the way, because we got people that are doing a fantastic job of developing new curriculum, that things that I didn't think about. And I always give credit where credit's due. If I find something someone's doing, we got this kid, who's actually pretty phenomenal shot, Christian Sailor, who is, one of the top rocks in the IPSC USPSA world now. I mean, the guy's just pretty phenomenal. And we get those Michael Jordan guys, every, 15 or 20 years. You can say that, Rob Latham, I came through the period of time when Rob Latham and Jerry Barnhart and Jerry Michalik, Michael Plasko, Chip McCormick, Bill Wilson, Les Bear, I knew all those guys, and I was kind of like the young guy that was right behind them, to understand, to be able to watch and just understand how these guys operated and the equipment they use and their mindset. And yeah, the game of the action shooting world has changed dramatically, for the good in a lot of ways. I mean, we still got, we got, 250,000 people shooting every weekend, some type of action shooting match nationwide.
It's super taken off. It's funny that the same conversations are still being had. I was on scrolling through Facebook the other day, and a gentleman that's a writer brought up something about competition shooting isn't gunfighting. And then all these guys start arguing, and I'm reading it, and I was just like laughing, like, are we still debating that? Like, of course it's not gunfighting. But like, it seems like even with how prevalent this stuff is and how accepted it is and how much people are involved in it, we're still arguing the same silly stuff at times.
Yeah, it's funny. I give you a little back history. So, I mean, I talk about it now, but because it's been 35 plus years, is that it was funny. I had some tier one groups back in the early 90s, guys who I'd met in the competition world, and they would, come up to me and ask me questions. And I knew they were in the military, but I never knew their background. We were just guys who just like to shoot, and we were always, hey, what kind of gun you got? What's your new sight? What's your new trigger? What's your new gear that you got? And those guys are always asking those questions to me because I was constantly, on top of any new gear that ever popped up on the marketplace. So I knew things that prototypes were coming out, things where I was involved in the industry in that period of time. And they're going like, hey, can you like come down and maybe teach a class for us? And I was going like, yeah, I mean, I was already a national champion by 91. And so that period of time, the guys going like, yeah, I want you to come down and just kind of work with a small group of our guys. I went, yeah, no problem. I could do that. I said, where you guys located? Oh yeah, well, we're down in Virginia Beach, and we kind of, we'll try to get you to come in. And so, oh, by the way, can you shoot a SIG? I was going like, well, I think I have, I can get a hold of one. And so I got this SIG 226 in, and I just shot the piss out of it.
Boys.
Yeah, so the Navy boys, and so I go down and do my first class, and there's like 32 dudes there, and I'm going like, holy shit, these guys are freaking SEALs. They're freaking great. Oh my God, I got to be on my game plan. And so what happened was, I was just crushing these guys, on the range. But, I had done my homework. But that was a period of time where most people really don't even know that there was 5 or 6 of us that were doing that quietly for decades. And
Jerry Barnhart, you were talking about.
oh yeah, Jerry and Rob Latham and Mike Boyd, and so when the word got out in the street quietly behind the scenes that we were basically told, hey Todd, just keep your mouth shut, don't say anything, just keep your mouth shut for who you're working with, and that was kept secret for decades. Never spoke about it, never said a word about it, and so I made a lot of friends along the way, and of course, once you go from one branch of service, you end up going to another branch of service, and so on and so on. So I have been very fortunate to work with every branch of service except Space Force. I haven't done that yet, so I don't even think they even have a team yet. But thank God Trump, yeah, pew pew, yeah,
Get some laser
yeah, a
blasters.
little bit bigger stuff. But yeah, it's so if you so I would say by the late '90s, early 2000s, you saw this big, huge transformation in tier one groups that their skill set just, I'd say, just doubled, and they started to understand how action shooting can be put into a CQB situation. Gun handling skills. I mean, that's all one thing we're doing is gun handling skills. I mean, you know. So, I mean, think about it. Only 1% of law enforcement, government agencies, or military guys are physically competing in some type of action shooting sport. Okay, we go on a limb and say there's 2%, okay, in which it's not. And
Right.
I pretty much know most of the guys that are doing it. So the Marine Corps out of Quantico, they have a great team out there. Of course, AMU down in Fort Benning, they got a phenomenal group down there. And I've known all the AMU guys from the very beginning when they started the action shooting team at AMU, which started in 1991. A guy named Merle Eddington was actually on the team. And Merle actually became a national champion, won the nationals in '94. My memory is working today. But yeah, so I would think that once we started dealing with handguns, we were already shooting 3 gun back in the '80s anyway. So the carbine world kind of started coming into play. So, interesting story. A guy named Matt Reisnick, who was killed in Black Hawk Down. Matt was a friend of mine. I never knew he was a D boy, and so I was playing around with red dot scopes on ARs, and he was very interested in that. And this was probably about '91. Jerry Misalik and a guy named Bruce Pyatt, a couple of the other top 3 gun guys in the country. We were putting dots on our guns because we were putting dots on our handguns. And Jerry Barnhart and I were really kind of the first guys to introduce that in the late '80s when we started playing around with them. And we'll get to that later about red dots. But yeah, so I started putting them on there, and I remember Matt came up to me and he's going like, "Dude," he goes, "we can reach out to like 200 yards with a carbine." I was going like, "Yeah, you can get out to 300 if you get the right dot in the damn thing." And so that period of time, I was playing around with a lot of carbines because 3 gun was kind of popular, but very antiquated to the day's 3 gun. I mean, we're shooting slugs, 1,600 feet per second slugs at targets at 200 yards away. I mean, guns were, they were junk. Shotguns were, rifles were, we still had carry handles on. We were starting to chop them off by probably '91 or '92. What we're trying to get rid of that stuff because scopes were mounted off the top of the gun, 8 inches off the top of the
8 inches
stock, and
over the board.
oh,
Yeah.
it was fucking horrible. So I remember chopping my handguard off and welding a Picatinny rail onto it. And here locally with a local gunsmith, he's going like, "Todd, this is pretty stupid." And then we started doing it, and everybody started getting into the flat tops. Shortly after that in competition, they didn't really come mainstream until probably '96 or '97. They started coming around. But
Do
yeah, so
you know or remember a fellow Virginian named D.R. Middlebrook?
oh yeah, I knew DR real well. Yeah, DR kind of was one of the top guys in IPSC or USPSA because the '81 Nationals was held in Lafayette, Virginia, which is only like 45 minutes from me, and then they had '83 Worlds there. So Robbie won the '81 Worlds and the Nationals and the '83 World Championship, which is only held. It was just only about 45 minutes from the other side of Williamsburg, Virginia. So, but
I've
yeah, so
visited him. I've been out to his range and done some shooting with him and did some filming with him a couple years back. We haven't ever published the videos we shot with him, but he talked considerably about the red dot on the rifle. And it seems like there's a bunch of dudes like from that time frame that are like, I was the guy that put the red dot on the
yeah.
gun.
Yeah,
Should we get you
may
and
may
throw like a bag of machetes or hammers on the floor and let you guys
yeah, yeah.
sort it
Yeah,
out?
well, I mean, I know DR, I mean, I like DR, he's a good friend of mine and over the years, but he wasn't shooting three gun like I was. I was shooting three gun up in New York, of New England area, down in the South and everything. And I never saw him, shoot a competition with it. So
And I wasn't trying to create a controversy. I just was, it popped in my head as you were talking.
no, no. So yeah, that was interesting. Um, so if you look at actually in the movie Black Hawk Down, you'll notice that the D boys actually had aim point scopes that were on their guns in that period of time, which is there was only three or four of them actually in the scene. But that so my buddy Matt Reiser, who was actually killed in Black Hawk Down. So we were friends for many years prior to coming into that, and so it was an interesting period of time, and I think we were just fascinated with technology and making guns shoot flatter and better triggers and more accurate bullets and making things more reliable and along the way. So it was an interesting time, in the '90s because God, firearms back then they were substandard compared to what they are today. I mean, what we're doing machining wise now is like shit. It's incredible now.
Dude, I've got a pile of ARs, as most of us do, and to have one that's like a 1 minute gun's pretty normal now. I mean, it's still not, you're not going to like Walmart and buying one, but there's a bunch of companies that are spitting these things out that you can hit shit at 500-600 yards with 55 grain ball ammo like it's nothing. It's pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have a bunch of ARs in every configuration. So and everything for three gun and carbine courses I do for law enforcement. Civilian side of people who just want to understand a basic AR design and how to use it, how to properly put it on paper. But yeah, I mean, you think about the bullets and barrel manufacturing between those two combinations. They have I remember back 20 years ago, work with John Paul at JP Enterprise, and John was telling me, he go, "Oh, I got the greatest setup on the barrel, Todd." He goes, "Man, you got to get a hold of these things." So I got a hold of them, started shooting them. I was going like, "Dude, I'm shooting men of angle at 300 yards away." And he was kind of the very, I would say, not the leader, but he was one of the first guys in the competition world that took an AR platform and really just developed it into understanding chambers, bolt heads, bolt carriers, barrel twist, length of barrel, barrel profiling, and all that. In with adjustable gas blocks when they started coming out, it changed the way we shoot guns. I mean, just an adjustable gas block alone was a huge innovation in the AR world. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
took a gun that basically was basically a 308, turned it into a 5.56.
Mm.
As far as recoil and everything goes. So, but it's yeah, it was an interesting turn of events along the way for over the years for in the AR platform. And I think I still have my first H bar
Oh, cool.
Colt that I have. Yeah, I think I still have one that's still original other than barrels been changed out a couple of times. So, but those are valuable now. So you kind of hard to get. So if they decide they want to take them, I'd probably throw in a river or something. So.
I didn't hear that. I heard you one time say, and this is probably a recording from, I would guess, the mid '90s. You were doing a presentation, one of your exhibition shoots. I don't know where it was. It looked like somewhere hot and dusty. And there's a crowd of people murmuring behind the camera, and you're blazing away at some steel targets and doing some demos. And you said something to the effect of, I'll paraphrase it, that you shot 1,000,000 rounds before you figured out that you were doing it wrong. Does that ring a bell to you, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I teach a lot of classes now, and I do, and so you think about it. So when I started in '82 shooting a handgun in competition, um, so I so by '83 or '84, I was pounding rounds downrange, and like pounding rounds is like 120, 130, 140,000 rounds a year.
Holy
I'd
smokes.
say, oh yeah, that was nothing. I mean, I'm still shooting 100,000 rounds a year now.
And that was
So
probably in those days a lot of 45.
mainly 45 ACP. I mean, to have
And
a trick gun was to have adjustable sights. That was a trick gun.
were
You
you
know,
were you in the 38 Super days?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
So I was there for the very beginning of that. There was only a handful of guys that got 38 supers, and we started. So a guy named Michael Plasko started kind of 38 super. He kind of started that period of time with Chip McCormick and Kay Clark's Jim Clark Sr. actually, and they started that whole super world. And probably about 95, they started messing around with it. So by 96, there was a handful of guys who were shooting in competition. I know Rob was shooting one in 96, and God Almighty was shooting like big bullets, 170 grain bullets, because we run in unsupported chambers and barrels, and we were blowing cases like they were nothing. Powder sucked back then. They're real temperature sensitive on powder. So we only had two or three powders that we could actually, put into the case, and keep it from blowing up. But power factor back then was 175. So it's not 165 now. So we were running 183, 185 power factors in order to make the floor for major power factor back in the day. And they didn't
Mm.
change that until, back until the 90s. So yeah, so 38 Super changed the game. Is what it did. It changed the world of less recoil. Yeah, we went through a huge learning curve. It probably I'd say from 85 to 87, there was a huge learning curve in trying to keep the guns operating, keep them working. But the 45 was actually still prevalent at the time. There were guys that were still shooting it, still winning with the 45. I mean, I know Jerry Barnhart won the Nationals. I think it was in '87. I think he did that with a 45. I think I could be on time flies, but I think Jerry did win it that year with a 45, if I'm not mistaken. Even though the Super was around them.
So you were banging out 100,000+ rounds a year. I'm sure you were loading yourself.
Yep.
How much time were you sitting at a press? Like, was this like every couple nights you just had to like sort some brass and do some cleaning? And or did you have like that's just an absurd amount of loading. And I know a bunch of guys now that are high level USPSA guys. A bunch of them are all running those automated like 650, 1150 setups. One of them actually works for HK, and on the side, his job is those automated computer controlled systems where these guys basically have little miniature factories going. You're
Yep.
pulling a handle 150,000 times.
Yeah, easy. And they were, most of those were lead bullets back then because, I was young and I actually had a good job. I was an HVAC mechanic, commercial HVAC mechanic. I'd gone to school and became got good in that world. My father was an HVAC mechanic, and went in business when I was 8 years old. So I was a slave to the business, from when I was 8 years old until I was like 24 years old. And then I left and went on the commercial side. So the big equipment actually intrigued me. But with that, became a higher pay. So I was making good money, working a full-time job, married, and didn't have a kid then. I wasn't married then, but I was dating my wife at the time. And so yeah, it was me at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting up in the morning, either loading in the morning, getting up at 4:30 or 5, loading for an hour and a half, go to work, come back home, go to range, get home, clean guns, load till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I did that for 15 years.
So you
I
were
mean,
so invested in improving that you would get up hours before work to sit at the loading press.
yeah, in 97, so in 97, I mean, 87, in 87, I won a major match and I beat all the pros. And from that point on, I sat down and I'm very, um, a person who that is, energized in whatever I do. Always have been. And so I used to race motocross. I was big in motocross back in the 80s when I was a teenager. I did a little bit of everything. Um, but once I won a major, I sat down and wrote a list. These are the things I want to accomplish in 5 years, and I wrote down that complete list, and there were 8 or 9 major points that I wanted to accomplish. And if I didn't accomplish those points in 5 years, then I'd get out and go do something else. In the fifth year, it was I want to win the national championship, so I won the nationals in my fifth year, and which was in '91. And my unrealistic goal was to win the world championship. And then in '96, I won the world championship. So that for me was something that if you didn't pour the time into anything and you put the effort into something that you want to do, in life, if you're not a motivated individual to just sit on the couch and watch television or go out and attempt to do something, that thinks you satisfies you, and go like, oh, I'm just a C-class shooter, Todd, and I just kind of enjoy shooting on weekends. But you compete every month. I see you at a match. I see you here. I see you there. You're traveling, and how come you're showing up and you're not getting any better? Well, you got good equipment, but what are you doing? You're failing at something because obviously there's a mindset that tells you, well, I just can't beat you, so I don't plan on putting the time and effort in spending 150,000 rounds down range and getting up at 4:30 in the morning and dry firing 2 hours, or dry firing at 2 hours at night and working on guns, working on equipment, loading. So for me, that was, something that was motivated through me through my father. My father was a extremely hard worker, 60, 70 hours a week in business, and he kind of taught me that mindset. If you want to be good at something, then you got to get your ass up in the morning and go do it. And so that was my mindset, and I still have that mindset today. I mean, I'm not as, I would say, energetic about getting up and dry firing at 4:30 in the morning anymore, because I know what to do. I can pick up a gun and go dry fire for 10 minutes, 15 minutes a day, and keep my skill set to where I want to be at. And I'm still competing. So I'm staying on top of the game. And I wouldn't say that I'm the, top rock in the action shooting world, because all these kids are, 19, 20, 24 years old who are, they're hauling ass. I mean, and plus the game has changed. The game has changed. It's not accuracy in my as much as accuracy based as it was back in the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s. The game has changed tremendously. But there's plenty of motivated guys out there that that I see on the range. I see at the national matches that I go to, and I watch them and I pay attention to them and I congratulate them for exactly the hard work they're putting in to get it done. And so there's probably 5 or 6 guys out there that I say, yeah, you're something. You got something that's in your blood that you want to win, and that's keep that mindset in place. And I teach that to my students all the time, whether they're concealed carry, they're a competitive shooter, they're someone in law enforcement, maybe they're in the military, some tier one group, or somebody who's just getting in who wants to get their skill set up, and we are seeing that on a nationwide basis now.
It's pretty cool, the access to information now. Like if you want to learn how to sharpen a pocket knife, you can go on YouTube and see 87,000 videos on sharpening a pocket knife, where your granddad or somebody would have showed you in the past. I remember like reading Jordan's book, or sitting down and looking at something Ayub wrote, or going to a class and having somebody like show me how to grip the pistol. But I remember trying to figure out how to shoot a handgun, and like, okay, like I see some guys here holding it differently. How do I do that? And there was no YouTube videos. And now it's wonderful. There's 87 million freaking people that understand the basic mechanics of holding a gun. I was at SHOT this year and I ran into two guys. One of them hosted me years ago in California for a class, and he was an okay shooter. And the other one was at a class of mine years ago, I think both in California, coincidentally. And I like basically taught the second guy how to freaking load and use a holster. They both shoot for Beretta now. They're both USPSA GMs, just a freaking couple years, 5-10 years. And like I ran into the one, and I've seen him around, and I'm laughing. I'm like, damn, man, like I remember meeting you and you didn't even know how to like take the damn thing out of the box. And now you're the man, right? You're like a samurai with the freaking pistol. That's awesome. But the codified information. I was, before we did this, I watched a couple videos of you, and I saw an old video you did. I think you were still working for Para. It was probably in the 90s, and you were talking about reloads, and made me chuckle because I took a lot of flack for this 10 years ago. But you said you were watching the magazine go into the Magwell. And you, of course, remember people saying, stare at the target and look for threats as you load, blah, blah, blah. And I made a video about that years ago on our YouTube channel talking about it. No relationship to you or anybody else. I was just discussing like the kind of the thought process by that. And it's like, man, the people that thought about this shit thought about it a long time ago, but we're still arguing about some of those things, even though there's all this. It's funny.
Yeah. But I tell you the funny part, because I started the high reload back in the 80s. And so, of course.
My high reload, you're talking about like up here.
Yep. Yep. In your face. Yep. In your face. So, of course, when I started, and I really started getting into it about 84, 85. Well, of course, the only way that you could really watch anybody and technique wise was to go to a match. And I'm going like, okay, I'm gonna go watch these guys and watch, Brian Enos and Jerry Barnhart and Rob Lates. I mean, Chip McCormick, all these guys who were the top rocks, in the game. So I'd go, go out on a limb and say, I'm going to go to this match in California because these guys are going to be there. And so I would, work my ass off, saving money, go to these matches, sleeping in a car, saving everything, eating, stuff that, only that you could just, provide enough just to get you to the next match. So you were saving money where you can, but you sit there and just watch every technique they did, and you kind of memorized that. And I was going like, wow, there's some isolated areas, how they draw the gun. I think I can do better there. Let me work on this technique. And I was watching how they were loading underneath. And of course, we had timers then. So timers were a huge benefit for us to understand how we could get better with one technique or another. And so one day I'm out on the range, and everybody used to drop their gun down to their belt wise, basically to the magazine, and do a mag change. And I went, I'm going to try bringing up a little higher. And so probably I would say by 88, I had already perfected that high reload drill, and guys are going like, "Oh, I don't know why you got that in your face. It's faster to bring the gun to the magazine than bring the magazine to the gun." And I was going, "Okay, whatever." And then I started winning all these shoot-offs, and of course there were mag changes involved. So next thing you know, I was winning these shoot-offs, and it was because of the reloads. And a lot of guys are going like, you could see them going like, "Oh, that's a pretty good idea, Todd. I think I'm gonna transition to that." And of course, along the way, it's kind of like there's where you get law enforcement, "Oh my God, you can't have the gun in your face and you can't do that. You want to keep it down so you can see the threat." I was going like, "Yeah, but if the gun's not loaded, what the fuck good is it to you?" So if you run a gun dry, and which, in every gunfight, I debate I would debate this over law enforcement because typically they shoot them dry anyway. So, if you have time and opportunity to be able to make a mag change because you've shot 8 or 10 rounds, that's a fabulous technique to run. But you talk to anybody who's ever been in a gunfight and shot more than, 10 or 12 rounds, they usually shoot the damn gun dry. So I was going like, if it's dry, what good is it to you? Just get the gun back online as quickly as possible by doing what? Doing one thing at a time. If I'm shooting, that means I'm aiming. That means I'm doing all the proper fundamentals in order to hit the target or try to hit the target, in the speed that I want. So if the gun's empty, best thing to do is get the gun back online, get the fundamentals of getting back in properly, getting the gun, which is nothing but a manipulation drill. So and I felt that manipulation drills and understanding how to look at the gun, where to look at the gun, why to look at certain parts of it in order to get it back online. I mean, I used to put like paint underneath my Magwell, just in the part of it. So if I didn't see that paint, I knew that the gun wasn't high enough in my face. So it allowed me to drive it back to the target faster. So yeah, I had yellow paint that set underneath of it, and if I go to a match and I'd run the stage and I'd go like, "You didn't see the paint, son. You got to get your gun higher." So I teach today that put the front sight of your hat at the top of the brim of your hat. So if the front sight is not at the brim of the hat, then the gun's not high enough. So it
you're
allows
bringing
you.
this thing real high.
Yes. Yes, it is extremely high. And I do that with, every single handgun that I use. It doesn't matter the model. I mean, handguns in general, for years, they never had magwells on the gun. And so think about what we've done to the magwell situation, like at Staccato. So I work for the Staccato, and we started putting magwells, our 24/7 magwell on our guns. Now everybody who's got a Staccato, they want a magwell on it because it makes it easier to reload. So that stress period of getting the gun back online and getting able to be able to get back on the target quicker, magwell made a huge difference in that. And shit, we started putting magwells in the guns back in probably, I mean, I got some antiquated ones that we just would, I just go out in the field and cut out a plate off of it's been shot to shit from 5.56, and we would just cut it out, and I would grind it, put it up, weld it to the back of a mainspring housing, and it would just be so antiquated. I still have those guns today. And so as people go like, "Todd, that's your magwell that you use?" I went, "Yeah, this is magwell I used to win the nationals with." So now they've got open, we got the open, bottoms that are flared out that, companies are doing now. And we're starting to see the advantage of getting a firearm back online faster, because of the techniques of, being able to have fundamentally how to get the gun back online faster for qualification courses, stress courses, whatever. And if you give a guy if I give a guy my gun that I shot back in the 80s, they would go ballistic. They would go like, I can't even get a magazine in the gun. So think about what single stack did to high cap.
Go back 1 second. You said if I give a guy a gun, and I lost you for a second.
If I give a guy a gun that I shot back in the 80s,
Okay.
that was purely stock, okay, in today's time with the technology that I don't care if it's Smith and Wesson or SIG or Glock you look at a Gen 5, or you look at an M&P, or you look at a SIG 320, look at the texture, the magazine, themselves, the sighting systems, the open magwells, the reliability of these guns are so much better. Those were competition guns in the 80s. You follow me?
I do. Yeah. Kind of like my pickup truck has parts in it now that a race car would have had in the 60s or 70s.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Oh, I got so many questions. You loaded that much ammo. How often you get your lead levels checked? Ever?
I got lead poisoned twice in my life. In 1980, 89, I got lead poison from shooting at an indoor range, because I lived pretty close on my job. I was pretty close to an indoor range, and I would buzz over there after work if I couldn't get to my outdoor range, and I would go shoot because I was shooting every day. I
Mm.
shot 7 days a week. I handled a gun. I'm loading, and later on in life, I got a wife, I got a kid, and so, my life was jammed around shooting and taking care of family. And so I would run to the range and I would shoot. I'd fill up every mag I have. I had 25, 30 mags. I'd fill them up and I'd run for an hour and a half. And of course, compensators were on the guns at the time because I was shooting open class, which was primarily the gun of choice. If you didn't have a comp on the gun, you're not going to win. So, shooting, I think one year the most rounds I ever shot was 100, like 152,000, and I would say that probably 120,000 of those were all lead bullets. A company called Denny's Bullet Company. They had a 168 grain bullet that I actually shot. 160 grain bullet that we shot in the supers at the time. It was cheap. It was, but the ventilation in indoor ranges back then sucked.
Those
So,
Rangers were like a box fan in the
oh,
window kind of
oh
thing.
yeah, oh my God. And I shot probably, 400, 500,000 rounds in this one range over probably a 6 or 7 year period. And the owners were cool. They knew who I was. I was kind of getting some notoriety in the area, in the state, up and down the East Coast of, oh, Todd's a hot rock, and, he's the upcoming shooter. But yeah, then I had to go on chelation. And that, I didn't know what lead poison really was. I mean, I didn't care. I was, 24, 25 years
Do you
old. It was
remember
like,
how high your numbers were?
the numbers are different then than they are now. So I got up to 118 points is what I've got up to. So typically at that time, how they did the points were, basically 13 to 17 was a normal range for individuals, to a normal adult anyway. So if a kid under 5 had something up in that range, they were having development problems in the brain. So I got my range was at 117, if I remember correctly, 117 and 118. So I was sick for like, I mean, I got to the point where I was lethargic. I didn't know what was going on with me. I had this sweet taste in my mouth. I went to the doctor and told him what was going on. I was going like, yeah. He goes, well, do you deal in your job in lead? I went, well, no, I compete with, and I shoot a lot. He goes, well, we need to check on this. So I went through a three month period of chelation. Had to take the big horse pill that I had to take. Got out of that facility, stopped shooting it probably by 1990. Got a range outdoors, and and of course every year I got myself checked after that period of time, and it ended up understanding what lead can do to your body,
Mhm.
and so it's it can kill you. I mean,
It's
it can.
something that I talk about a lot, and I wanted to hear it from you. And I figured you were going to say something like this. We speak about it all the time. I teach lead safety practices. I taught it in construction. I have a construction background like you do in HVAC. I'm a fifth generation carpenter, and it's amazing how many people are like, "Oh, you're a pussy. It's not that big a deal." Like it'll sterilize your ass. It'll fuck your kids up. And I think there's a lot of guys that take it a little, even the nice new indoor ranges, top notch ones, the lead is still everywhere in them. And it's all over the floors. It's on the shooting tables. It's all over the bathrooms. It's on the doorknobs. There's just too confined. And I think we get too comfortable. It's like a mechanic that's okay with gasoline and shit all over his hands all the time. You just get comfortable with it, and you're not like in the trades. I knew guys that were finishing floors and things like that where they should have had respirators on. They're like, oh, I'm okay breathing these solvents, or body guys doing body work, breathing solvents and paint. Next thing you know, they got kidney and liver and brain cancer and shit from years of doing it.
Yeah,
So
it is.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, just picking up brass, picking up primers off the ground, that you are loading with. I mean, so I'm very cautious of that these days. So cleaning your guns. So for me, I mean, I'm still trifling, and I clean my guns without no gloves on, but I usually use D wipes. I mean, I'm with Hoppies, so use that Levy gun. And it's amazing how much carbon and stuff that people don't realize that carbon is lead that builds off the bullet. So I mean, I went through a period of time. So I went to work for Hornady in '97, and that's where we started talking about lead becoming more of a problem. I mean, the Clinton administration started popping up about lead, how dangerous it is, and shooting, and lead in the water, and lead in berms, and these, the whole 9 yards of what that could do to people. Then they wanted to close down ranges, and the EPA got involved more not with that. So we decided, I'm going like, hey, here's my story. I got lead poison. Why don't we do our due diligence and try to do an encapsulated bullet? So Steve Horney at the time, so when I was with Horney for about 7 years, and Steve's going like, yeah, why don't we do an encapsulation that we take the base of the bullet and we put a cap on it. So now compensators, because as soon as the gun fires, it's burning the base of the lead off the back of it. So as it goes down range, if you're on a windy day, you're going out and shooting. I mean, I'll shoot 500 or 600 rounds, 700 rounds in a day. But if the wind's blowing back in your face and you have a bullet that's that doesn't have a encapsulated base on it, like most of the bullets out there today, you're going to get that lead coming back at you. So you're actually picking that up and you're breathing it. So people just don't realize it. So
interesting.
Picking up brass. Yep. Even picking up brass. I mean, you're picking up brass off the ground. I highly recommend that you wash your hands, after, picking up brass, or, get some D wipes, or get some Levy gun from Hoppies, which, they actually have a really nice little setup that they have as far as, it's a solid, good material that you could be able to get the lead off of it. So it's amazing. I mean, you fuck around. You find some things that happen to you. I mean, I got issues, that's happened to me over the years, and I always go back and go like, hey, wonder if that's lead who did that. I don't even know. I mean, think about, shotgun shells.
Sure.
And I have shot. I mean, so I worked at Blackwater for 8 years. So I'm starting in the late '90s, and then by the early 2000s, I had developed a shotgun course for law enforcement for the 870s and the Mossberg 500s. And since they were prevalent in cars for law enforcement, going like, hey, let's put this together. So we were shooting steel targets with bird shots, just manipulation drills, understanding how to work a pump shotgun, just all the techniques all it took. And of course, way that range was set up, it was facing the east, and we were coming, based our backwards to the west, and we're getting all this, wind coming in from the ocean. And hell, next thing I know, I'm starting going like, hey, I felt this years ago. We need to get our blood test. So the Blackwater guys going like, okay, everybody gets a blood test. And so they called me up one day and they go like, yeah, Todd, your numbers are above where they need to be at. You're off the range for 2 months. And so I was off, and so they ended up probably 4 or 5 of us that our lead levels were exceeding normal ranges by 30%. And we're going like, okay, yeah, I've been here. I don't want to go through that shit again. So I learned a valuable lesson from it, and one thing led to another. I got off of it, and we found other ways, other methods of understanding how to keep that, birdshot powder from hitting the, target. You'll target it 7, 10, 15 yards away, and you're getting all that lead coming back off of the lead because, the shot itself was lead. Now, just now we got the primer and we got that on top of it. But
Right.
shit, shotgun shells, the lead that's in a shotgun shell is it's pretty amazing. Just in the primers, twice as much it is in a pistol for sure.
That lead stiphnate. I would add there is no acceptable level of lead in the human body. There's limits that, like OSHA says, when it gets above this, that we should really take a look. But there's no like happy level. We don't want any lead in us if possible. But like this shit out in the berms and stuff is quite inert. It's like, I'm not talking to you, but more the listeners. When the stuff's in the air and on our mustache and on our fingers, that's like, I think people often think like no drinking on the range, the like no beverages. They think it's because people don't want sticky pop on the range. It's they don't want you putting the pop bottle to your lips and drinking that shit in. But I digress
Yeah.
from them. Lots of good information out there on that. How's your wrists and elbows? Shooting 140,000 rounds of hardball 45 a year. You're
Well, I was a workout fiend with for upper body for decades, and so yeah, did I go through periods of time where I got tendonitis in elbow, I got carpal tunnel in my wrist, I got arthritis in my hands, shoulders are beat up from drawing the gun millions of times and dry firing. So I mean, I've fired documented over 6 million rounds in my career. So with that 6 million rounds downrange over the years, and that's averaging 110, 120,000 rounds a year. And there were some years that I did more, and then there were a few years I got injuries along the way that I had to lay off for 3 months or 6 months because of a small operation here, or I got carpal tunnel here, or I got a back issue or a neck issue from shooting too much shotgun or something. Um, so for me, in the sense where shooting all those rounds, if you don't know how to stretch, then if you don't know how to stretch and keep your body stretched out, you're going to have all kind of problems. Because I hold the gun extremely tight. So one day, hopefully you and I can get on the range together, and I'll show you how I hold the gun and how hard I hold the gun. Um, I would say, so people ask me, he said, Todd, if I'm not in front of you, how can you explain to me how hard you hang onto a gun? And I'll go like, go get yourself a 35-pound weight and stick it out in front of you. I said, hold a 35-pound weight out in front of you with two hands. Okay. That's basically about how hard 30 to 35 pounds is how hard you need to be able to hang onto a gun. So for me, stretching was, so I've gotten to the point where probably 6 or 7 times in my life that tendonitis popped up and it was just a horrible issue. So they wanted to cut me. They're going like, Todd, if I cut you and fix it, you may get one more cut, but after that, you're done. I'm going like, well, damn, I'm going like, in the 90s, I'm going like, this has happened to me multiple times. What the hell am I going to do if I get cut once and it happens again? My shooting career is over with. I'm not going to be able to shoot anymore. So I went to a therapist, a friend of mine who I met shooting. He's going like, well, Todd, why don't you just go through therapy? I was going like, yeah, like what? He goes, hey, you come down to my place. I'm in Carolina. Come down here, and I will show you how to properly stretch that tendon out and be able to get that nerve in a way in that it can get out of the way and do it properly. So I went through this whole program with him, and every time it flares up, in which I stretch every day anyway. So if I'm driving to the range, after the range, I'm stretching, coming back. So I'm keeping that part of my arm that is the most important part of shooting, because you can get a tremendous amount of loss of strength in your hand by just one nerve in your elbow, or something in your shoulder, or something in your wrist, or even one finger that
Yeah.
can, stall your progress of becoming a phenomenal shot, or lose the capability of being able to understand how to shoot a gun properly. So there's a tremendous amount of things that we can do stretching wise to do that. I know Jerry Mitchell that called me up. Jerry and I were. He goes, Todd. He goes, I saw you mention that one time. He goes, what are you doing? He goes, man, I got tendonitis so bad I can't even hold the gun. And it's back when he was shooting as much as I am. It's probably 15 years ago. And I explained to him, this is what he needs to do. He needs to go to a stretching coach to understand how to stretch those muscles out. Every finger at a time, your wrist, your forearms, your biceps, your triceps, your shoulders, to be able to keep those things flexible. And I said, if you do it and you're on a constant regimen of it, you won't have any problems. And I have been lucky that I have not had any problems in probably 5 or 6 years. And so, of course, I get lazy sometime and I forget to stretch and do something. I feel it coming on. I get back in my stretching program right away, and that cures any problems I may have.
What did your upper body or workouts look like over the years?
I got to the point where I got lifting a lot back in the 90s, and I found that I mean, I was from head to toe. We're talking, calves and thighs and glutes, everything across the board. And I found that I got pretty big in my legs, and it actually slowed me down. So I felt that I got with for my personal body style, I felt that it was hurting me movement wise. So I went to a cardio base on from the hips down, and I went from a upper body weight program from the waist up. And so I wanted to, you need strong arms, you need strong shoulders, okay, and a good back muscles in order to be able to support a rifle, a shotgun, and a handgun. And so for me, I spent a lot of time on the bench, a lot of time with dumbbells, understanding, that whole concept of having a good strong upper body will allow you to be able to maintain good control over a firearm. And so that was something I did for God 20 years. Do I still work out now like I used to? Nah, I don't. I don't. I'm 60 now, and I got little things that tweak me here or there. But I understand how to shoot. I understand what parts of my body that I need to keep up in order to maintain the skill set that I currently have.
I dig it. There's a fairly big YouTube personality that recently said that physical fitness doesn't play much of a role in survivability of self-defense scenarios. And a bunch of us that train martial arts and like spend huge portions of our life grappling other human beings, like all kind of jumped on it laughing. But he's a fairly well-known guy, and I like him personally, but it's like, how can you say that? Like, how can you possibly suggest that being fit and strong won't aid you? I mean, not even in like an actual fist fight, but like you just said, shooting the gun better. Like, I don't think anybody ever said, like, man, I'm too strong to shoot this gun. I'm holding the shotgun too well. This sucks. I wish I was a little weaker. Like, nobody ever said that.
I just laugh. So in my classes, I tell my students that, because I teach a lot of classes, and typically in a 2-day class, you shoot 1,000 to 1,200 rounds, and I get, you know, day two, people come in and go like, oh my God, we shot 600 rounds yesterday. I've never shot so many rounds in my entire life. He goes, my arms, my hands. Oh my God, Todd. He goes, how in the world do you do it? I said, well, you got to train the body, okay, to be able to understand, to be able to have that support base for your body to accept recoil into the gun, through the wrist and to the hand. And, most people look at my hands and go like, God, look at all these calluses you got on them. I'm going like, yeah, these calluses have been here for 40 years in my life. And so, they don't ever go away. They have been there literally for 40 years, other than a few periods of my time, in life where incidents where I couldn't shoot for a month or 3 months, or I think the longest I ever went was 6 months, where I didn't shoot a gun. And we should talk about that, and a loss of the ability to manipulate and be able to shoot a gun correctly. But so I tell anybody that, okay, here's the drill. If you and I've talked to a bunch of cops and a bunch of military guys over the years that get in a firefight. I mean, death is on the door, and they're going like, thought I was going to die, whether it be in Afghanistan or somewhere around the world. The guys are getting a big firefight, and I was going like, so hey man, how many rounds did you physically shoot in that gunfight? He goes, Todd, man, he goes, I burned up like 6 magazines. He goes, I just could not believe the firefight that we ran for an hour and a half. And I was going like, so what did your body tell you the next day? He goes, I couldn't even fucking walk because I was exhausted from shooting that much and trying to do it in that short period of time in an hour and a half drill, okay, of, basically saving my guys or save. So it was interesting that it just goes to show that your body is not in shape in order to do that, because as you know, well, most guys that, and whether it be in the military or law enforcement, they don't shoot a lot. I mean, a lot of your tier 1 groups, they go through, training, ops that they'll go through, and they may shoot for 2 months at a time, and then they're doing something else. So they have, in another program, and then they're on standby, so they don't get a chance to shoot like we do as pros on a regular basis. So we understand what our body's telling us. So in order to get in a firefight, or you get in a shootout, it's amazing. You talk to people. What was your feelings, or what was your body telling you? What happened after that? Going like, I didn't realize my thumb would be so much sore. I didn't think about, I got all these cuts and bruises on my hand. I'm going like, from just loading the gun. I'm going like, those are manipulation drills that you've lost a skill set in. So, I mean, there are some guys that, don't get me wrong. There are guys that are hardcore, warriors out there that do it and go like, yeah, Todd, I got in a firefight and I didn't feel anything the next day, and hell, I'm ready to go do another one. But it's just understanding, what your body tells you the next day or the day after. It's kind of like a good hard lift that you do. It's not the day after; it's 2 days going like, holy shit, I can't only walk today, because I'm doing squats, But so I mean, for your listeners out there, here's something that a question comes up, especially in law enforcement, guys in firearms that go like, hey, Todd, tell me about what happens when you go a month or 2 months or 3 months or a period of time without shooting a gun. I said, well, after, I can go 30 days, and not touch a gun and go pick it up, and I still know how to manipulate it. I still know how to be able to load it correctly. And I can go out and shoot. And after I shoot 100 rounds, I'm back where I should be at. Go 2 months, my trigger, my sight alignment starts getting a little squirrely. I'm not as patient with it as I should be. Go 3 months. I'm gonna tell you right now, you lay off if I lay off a gun 3 months, okay, I've lost, in my mind, I've lost 5% of my skill set in 3 months. For me, 5%. So you go 6 months without shooting a gun, and I've talked to hundreds of competitive shooters who played the game for years. They get out, they come back. People who have been out for 6 months because they had an injury, they had some type of surgery happen to them. And I was going like, so what happened to you? He goes, Todd, I couldn't hit the damn target. I haven't hounded a gun in 6 months. So I lost all my mindset of my mental capacity in order to understand follow through, understand how to mount the gun. I forgot how to draw the gun. Okay. So even though, forgetting how to draw the gun, and, you're going like, well, it's in the holster. You kind of know, put your hand around it. For me, if I'm off a 32nd of an inch, if I grab the gun incorrectly, a 32nd of an inch, that can affect my precision and accuracy at 50 yards away.
Now you're
So
adjusting your elbows and
yep,
your shoulders and wrists and all that
absolutely.
on that
Yeah.
presentation. Yeah.
A half inch of arm extension backwards, forward, whether it be the right hand or the support hand, as a right-handed shooter, these things people just don't think about. So think about qualifications for law enforcement. A lot of them now have gone from a 6-month program to a year-long program. So I feel law enforcement in general, and now I'm married to a federal agent, okay, currently. Um, my wife is she has to qualify every quarter. So at least on the Fed side, they keep them shooting every quarter. But she gets to the point where she goes, I got to dry fire 2 or 3 days, just to get ready because I know I'm calling on Friday. So I got to get my ass and do some dry firing here just to understand and feel that gun to get it in my hand, to
Mm.
be able to that gives her the confidence to get back on target correctly. And of course, she goes out and she qualifies perfectly fine, and she's a damn good shot. But you know, you go through a year. If somebody said, "Ty, you can't shoot a gun for a year," I would go like, "Jesus Christ!" I mean, I don't know what I would do if I didn't shoot a gun and I go a whole calendar year without shooting. I would probably take me to get my skill set back up. I would say 10,000 rounds.
Wow.
I would say 10,000 rounds to get me back to where I need to be at.
How do you
So,
feel as a 60-year-old your shooting compares to when you were 35 or 40 or 20 years ago, 25 years ago?
um, I probably, I would have to say,
And I'm talking about shooting, not running around on a USPSA stage. I don't mean like the physicality part of the game, but like shooting.
oh shit, I'm a better shot now than I was 30 years ago.
So your grip, you're not losing strength in your grip from when you were in your 30s.
No,
No, that's
no,
awesome.
not one bit, not one bit. Um,
What do
so
you do
my,
better? I'm sorry.
go ahead.
What do you think you do better now as a 60-year-old that you weren't doing as a 35, 40-year-old? I mean, are the
Well,
sights any different? Are you pressing the trigger different? Or
yeah, I mean, yes, I'm. So think about it. So the equipment has gotten better because the accuracy of the firearms are better, ammunition's better. The all the components that are in the firearm are 10 times better than they were 35 years ago in the guns. They're much more reliable. We can get springs that are more consistent today. That the guns longevity wise getting a gun today and putting 100,000 rounds to a qualified, custom gun is like, it's not unheard of. I got probably 6 guns that got more than 250,000 rounds to them. The original sliding frames in them. I mean, barrel's been replaced in them. But as far as me becoming, I tell everybody, I've seen all the mistakes I've made, winning and losing. Whether I win a match or competition or I'm second or third in the competition, I knew the reasons why I lost the match. Okay. So today, you know, 20 years later, 10 years later, I understand all those segments of my fundamentals that I missed out in. I didn't take the fundamentals and detail them as much as I do now.
hmm,
So if you take a class from me, I will tell you, if you want to learn how to become a great shot, understand the fundamentals, and when you step up to the line and when the buzzer goes off or it's time for you to shoot, if you lack one fundamental, you're going to fail in that one shot.
that makes
So
sense.
I preach the fundamentals of shooting across the board. It's sight alignment, it's grip, it's trigger control, it's follow through, it's, the stance is important. It's probably more important than most people know. Your stance is probably more important than people even realize. And then I throw in the additional fundamental for me over the years is always a draw. The draw is a fundamental to get you to understanding what follow through is correctly. So if you screw up the draw, you're going to screw up your fundamental at the end, which is follow through. So all those things along the way in order to break the first shot off. And I may do that in a .65 first shot. But if all those fundamentals not perfect, I'm not going to hit that damn target correctly. So, I mean, I can still do a 65, 70 draw today, you know, and even in competition, okay, I back off at, 10%, 15%. Now I'm at 85 for my first shot. But if those fundamentals are perfect on that target at 3, 5, 7, 10 yards away, being under a second, and I hit that target consistently, my brain would tell me, you're on track for the right fundamentals. Let's do it again. Now, don't screw it up as you move, so if I go from one position to another, whether it be from concealment or for cover, whether it be a shoot situation or not shoot situation or a competitive situation, when I'm getting there, it's going like, don't fuck up the fundamentals on the first target you get there, because that carries over in the entire array. So if you start out with the fundamentals correctly on your first shot, that will carry through that string of fire, whether it be a whole magazine or 5 shots or 2 shots or 12 shots, it doesn't matter. So understand those hardcore fundamentals, and if you can incorporate those in your program every single time, and it starts with the draw, then the movement coming into a position, understanding how to shoot around a prop, understand around how to shoot around a car, understand around how to do that in competition. If you don't understand those fundamentals and you don't incorporate them, you're not going to be a great shot. And that's where guys who are 95%, competitive GM shooters in the world, there's where they're lacking at. Now, for me, 5% of that is all mental. If that 5% of the mental program for me to understand, there are different aspects of learning how to, draw the gun. So reaction, whether it be reaction versus action, you need to understand that where does a mental game come into play? The mental game comes into play prior to drawing the gun. If your mind is not set up properly, okay, to be able to accept what you're getting ready to try to accomplish correctly, then your fundamentals go out the door. So if you don't have the mindset that I have the confidence to do everything properly along the way here, and understand that everything we do is doing one thing at a time, one shot at a time, one fundamental at a time, and we move on from that. If you cannot incorporate that, you're never going to be a world champion or a national champion, or even win something at your local match. So that's where.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What are you doing when you're training to incorporate that from the mental aspect, to compartmentalize that?
It's understanding. It's always understanding. So if you and I on the range, and I go, okay, Mick, here's the drill right here. You and I are at the 3-yard line. Okay, we're going to shoot a target here, and we're going to draw the gun, but you have to be able to shoot 2 shots under a second. Can you do that? And you're going like, Todd, I shoot under a second all the time. Okay, you better get your mind right to be able to do that under a second at 3 yards away. So you're going to have full extension. Are you going to have your finger on the trigger getting to that target? Is your safety knocked off? All these mental things, you need to prep that prior to that happening. So now we go back and we go like, let's go back to the 50-yard line. I got an 8-inch target down there. You only have 1 bullet. That's all you got. You got to make it count. There's no time. There's no time at all. Make that shot for me right now. Now, there may be 100 people watching you. There may be just you and me and you on the range. But when you throw in the aspects of other people watching you, okay, am I going to fail here? Okay, there's where the mindset of you coming in and doing a demonstration as an instructor. So I demonstrate everything that I do. Okay, so my mindset has to be, I have to mentally be prepared in order to do that in front of my students and do it correctly. Am I perfect every time? Absolutely not, because it's a fucking handgun. It's the most difficult of all the firearms to master. It's just so hard to be good at shooting a handgun. So for me, it's understanding that mindset that you better understand, your brain has better tell your body that you better understand how to do those fundamentals correctly. So it's almost, I always told myself over years, it's kind of like Mickey Mouse, talking to the gun. So I'm Mickey Mouse in my head talking to my gun. You better listen to what I tell you because I'm mentally trying to tell you exactly what I want you to do. I want to control you. I don't want you to control me as the firearm.
I like that. If you could head back in a time machine, would you do anything different these last 40 years of shooting?
Yeah, I would have taken up golf and become a PGA Tour and made a shit pot full more money.
You mean there's no money shooting guns?
No, zero. Yeah.
I remember one time in the 90s, I was sitting at a kitchen table with my brother-in-law Dan, one of my best friends in life, and he and I both were shooting, and we got some guns on the table at his cabin in Michigan, and we're up there alone. I think it might have been deer season. I don't remember, but we're staring at some guns, playing with the guns and bullshit and then talking about shooting. And I'm like, man, it'd be so cool to get paid to do this. And so I remember like thinking like, what does that look like? What does that possibly look like? How does that work? And you just in our hour conversation named a dozen different businesses that you've had financial relationships with over the years. And this industry, uh, maybe more so than many others, maybe it's like that in motocross, maybe it's like that in acting. I don't know, but it's not like here in construction. You go to the supply house where you bought furnace furnaces from and sheet metal, and they're probably the same dudes in there for 20 something years working, right? They didn't go to like
Right.
every supply house in town. I go to the lumber yard here in my town. There's guys died that of old age that worked in that
Right.
place when I was a kid. They were like they worked all over the yard. They delivered. They worked in the office doing the loads for big builders for houses and shit, and then they died as old men there. But in this business, in 1 year, you see a guy, oh, he's shooting staccato, he's shooting this gun, he's shooting that gun, or he's working for that lube company or ammo company, or the sales guys. I just at
Right.
SHOT Show this year was like, wait, you're not with that company anymore, you're with this company. Like, why did you switch from that optics company to that optics company? And it's like everybody's trying to chase to make a living.
Well, here's the problem in the firearms industry. So everybody, I have, mothers and fathers come up and, I want my daughter or my son to become a professional shooter, Todd. What can I do? And I was going like, first of all, they're not going to make any money, not unless they own a firearms industry, um, in a business that is related to it, whether it be ammo, whether it be guns or accessories or somewhere along the way. So for me, over the years, I would I tell everybody I feel like I'm kind of like the last guy. There's two or three of us that are they're in the business. We're the kind of like the last ones to get through the door in order to make I would say a good living in the firearms industry because there's no money in the matches. There used to be, and there were cycles of time. So I've shot 17 different disciplines in my career. I'm really good at four of them. The rest of them I sucked at, even though I worked at them hard. Um, I tried out for the Olympic Games in 2004 in Greece, in rapid fire. I have all the shotgun sports. I tried all those over the years, along with the pistol stuff. So I was going
Now,
like,
I
I
bet
want to
you
be
didn't suck at them, but I bet you maybe didn't excel at the same level you did in the other four. Like, I bet if you
correct.
walked
That is
on
correct.
to Joe Schmo range shooting some sporting clays or something, I bet you do all right.
Yeah, yes, and I consider myself a good clay shooter, whether it be in trap or skeet or sporting clays. I suck at FTAS really bad, but yeah, I would if I'm only an 85% shooter, I consider that a failure.
Okay.
Okay, so for me, if I can't get near the top or in PRS, here's an example in PRS. Um, I got into PRS a few years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was going
which
like,
for
God, we got.
you listeners is precision rifle shooting.
Yeah, and so which is long range out to 1,400 yards away, would shoot out to a mile. And so I bought all the guns, got all the right equipment, I got all the loading data down. I knew how to shoot a gun, and I went and threw my name in the hat and go like, hey, I'm gonna go shoot a match here and see how I do. And I actually shot a bunch of PRS matches. And when you first get into a game, it takes you about a year to just understand how the rules go. You go from one match to another, whether it be an action or I don't care what shooting sport it is. Things are always going to be a little different. You kind of know the landscape of how things are going to work. And so I got into it and got equipment, got everything that you need: spotting scopes, range finders, all the chronographs, everything you need, all the equipment for loading. And I had precise shit. Okay, I could shoot, the 3/8 inch groups at 100 yards away. My gun's doped in. I know a Kestrel. I learned how to, just to run a Kestrel takes you a damn year how to work it. So went out and I'll go like, give yourself a year, Todd. Went out, started shooting, and I started progressing a little bit here along the way. And then as time goes, I got stuck on a plateau. And after about 3 years of doing it, I'm going like, I just got stuck. Took some classes from a couple of dudes who were phenomenal, PRS shooters. And, I learned some things and I kind of jumped off that plateau a little bit, but I just got stuck. And I decided that I wanted to go back into the pistol world because I was going like, I could see that I needed to put another 2 or 3 years into this hardcore in order to really understand and become, I would say, a player in that game. And
Like when
so I
Michael
decided,
Jordan tried to play baseball.
right, exactly. Yeah. Now, if Michael would have started that, maybe earlier in his career, he put the time into it. I mean, he worked at it for a couple of years. And Michael was, a phenomenal athlete. I mean, the Bo Jacksons of the world are your, once in 100 year, athletes. I don't fall in that category of being, 1 in 100 years. I consider myself one in every 20 year, individuals. And, I mean, I've been very successful in my career. In fact, I'll give you a tour here of my trophy case. So that big guy right there is my first national championship in '91, and all of these are all first place trophies along the way that I have got. Um, I have a few. I have a few second place ones. There's probably over 1,000 in there. Probably over 1,000 trophies that I've had over the years in there.
Do
And
you
people go,
do
"What?"
you even do you get any kind of match jitters at all? Pre-match jitters anymore?
No, not anymore. I don't. No,
No.
no, no, hell no. I've been doing it for so long. I've shot. So we sat down and here not too long ago. We was at a restaurant with a bunch of guys and the wife. We were all sitting down, and so stage wise, so just stages in the action shooting community, just in USPSA, I have shot somewhere around 15 or 16,000 stages.
Wow.
So 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 there isn't really much you can throw at me that I haven't seen that will make me nervous or give me concerned about something. Do I make mistakes? Yeah, I make mistakes. I don't hit. I miss a target every now and then, and I hit a penalty target, and it's because I got out of my fundamentals. I mean, my fundamentals, didn't were not all aligned correctly with the stars not lined up, and you're gonna make a mistake. I mean, because there's times where you need to be aggressive on certain types of stages because if you don't know our game is really it's a different type of USPSA is a different game because we don't go off of points and we don't go off of time. We take points and divide them by time. So whether you go shoot Sporting Clays and you go out and you shoot a Sporting Clays match and you're like, hey Mick, how'd you do today? Well, Todd, I shot a 91. I went, you son of a bitch, beat me by one. I shot a 90. Okay. Whether if I go out and shoot bullseye, what was your score? Well, I shot a 99 out of 100, or if you go shoot steel challenge, what was your total time? Oh, I did that in 80.65. In our game, there is no points. It's all what they call hit factor. So what your score is that you shoot on a Friday, my score on Sunday can affect your overall finish in the match. So it's the only shooting sport which I've hated for years. It's one thing I hate about the action, hit factor on scoring is that my score that I fired today, you can affect that score tomorrow.
Hmm.
So it's the only game in town that I dislike about it, and I would love to see us go to an all-time base type of scoring in USPSA and over the years, and I have voiced my opinion about it really for 30 years now. So because if I go to a match and you and I are in the league, we're the top two guys, in the match. Say with the national championship. And some guy that we don't even know who actually had gun problems, he got sick the day before, couldn't come and shoot the match, but he can come tomorrow and shoot. So he ends up beating us or having a higher hit factor on a stage that you and I had already shot. Well, that affects our scores. That affects our scoring. Okay. Because my percentages, because if you beat me on stage 12 by 1%, okay, and I'm 1% behind you. So the guy who has nothing to lose but to go for it, and he goes out there and he shoots it and he beats us both by 2%. My percentage now gets closer to yours, so I get more points.
Hmm. Why did
You
they do
follow
it?
me?
Why did the powers that be prefer that over the raw time?
That's just something, Jeff Cooper started back in the 70s, back in the late 70s and 78, 79, they started that and it just became the norm. So, but it's cost me, several national championships over the years, and it's been in my favor. So it's, it all depends on the individuals that are shooting the match. So if you got 10 top, professional shooters, shooting the match, they can change the scoring of who wins and who loses. Now, I have personally done that in the past, with individuals who I may dislike along the way, okay, who have, been, not up and up in the shooting sports. And I'm going like, hey, Mick, let me tell you something. I'm going to burn the next three stages down because you need a few extra points in order to win the match. So I can't win. I'm going to finish sixth or seventh. Okay. So would I give a shit? Nobody's going to care. They're not going to remember where Todd finished at the match, but they're going to remember who won the match. So you're my bud. So I'm going to go out and attempt to burn the next three stages down to change the hit factors to a higher hit factor because you need a few extra points because you're behind and I can change who wins the match.
Wow, that's cool. I bet we
cool.
can talk offline about all kinds of people you don't like, but we won't waste our energy on that.
We won't waste our time. Those days are long gone.
Who's a shooter, alive or dead, that you look up to, or somebody in the maybe not even sporting shooter. Maybe they were a copper or a military guy. Who's somebody that
Oh, wow.
resonates with you?
I don't know. I mean, I've shot with all the pros over the years. You know, I you know, um, I would have to, I would have to say that, um, God, I learned a lot from a lot of the top guys over the years, and they learned from me also. I mean, I have to say, Rob Latham is, I learned a lot from Rob, not only as a shooter, but as someone who's an industry guy. Um, we had our moments along the way over the years, in competition, that things have happened, and just the nature of competition. I got screwed, or he got screwed, or I won and he shouldn't have won, or that guy shouldn't have won. Um, I would guy named Chip McCormick. Chip
Mhm.
and I were friends for a long time, and I learned a lot from Chip in my mindset over the years. Of course, Brian Enos. I mean, everybody know people who don't know Brian Enos. You should look him up. Another individual who's actually very interesting in the sense where um, he worked on the mental game and a lot. And so for me, listening to Brian over back in the 80s and just listening little, just little blurbs that he would pop out along the way, they kind of resonated with me over the years. And I kind of kept those things in play. If I had somebody that I wanted to like say that, that impressed me over the years, if a longevity, I would have to say, believe it or not, a girl named Kim Rhodey.
Hmm.
Now Kim, if she makes it here in another month or so, she'll be going to 7 Olympics.
Wow.
Now, now that is a feat that no one will ever beat. Now you think about that. Now she's a trap shooter and skeet shooter, double trap, double skeet, and just think about the mindset of someone who has won so many gold medals and and silvers and bronze, but to be able to do that, maybe in 7 Olympics,
Wow.
that is amazing. So
That's a pressure cooker.
yeah, I mean, for her to step up on the line and be able to do that, regardless if she's a woman or a man or or a trans or whatever these days are that are stepping out there, stepping out there and shooting. Yeah, I'd have to put her in that category. I know Kim. I know Kim in over the years, but there are other individuals that who have phenomenal skill set. I mean, if I go along and I say, okay, Rob Latham's won more national championships than anybody, he'll go down in history as the longest living national champion over 35 40 years of shooting. Um, I can say that a guy named Jethro Dinicio, who back in the 80s, who was a freaking phenomenal steel challenge shooter. He was in his day, he was phenomenal. Casey Casibio, probably by far the best steel shooter. I would say he's the best steel shooter on the planet and best one to live. He has a phenomenal skill set of understanding how to play that game, and he is freaking good at it.
Yeah, he's
Um,
fast.
he's phenomenal. And I've known Casey since before he was born, believe it or not. I knew his father used to come on the range, and I knew his mother out in L.A. and the L.A. basin. I used to go out there and shoot back in the 80s with his dad. Super nice guy. I knew when he was born, and I saw him shoot when he was like 7 or 8 years old,
That's
and
cool.
I saw his whole transformation of how he's come along in the firearms industry. Um, Another kid, Max Michelle. Another Max is with CZ. I mean, excuse me, not CZ, but
Sid.
with Sig and
Yeah,
shit. He's a you know phenomenal shot. I mean, Max is. I've known him since he's about 10, 11 years old. He just he has a aspect about him that he has a phenomenal teaching skill. I'll tell people if you want to go take a class from somebody other than myself, go take it from Max. Max knows how to teach, and he knows how to put that on paper and be able to show that to the students in a fashion that I think very important. Um, Eric Gerfel, I think most people may not know who he is, but um,
one of the
is
best in
he?
the world.
Yeah, he's probably the best all around IPSC shooter on the planet and has been for years. Um, so I'm only really one of a few handful of guys that's ever beat Eric at the nationals, at other matches over the years. So we bumped heads together. So he came around about 96 or so, about 96, 97. He started coming to the game. And he won his first world championship in 99 in the Philippines. Um, I still have a, um, in my crawl over that because There were some politics that took place. I should have won. So I was second in 99. I was second in 2002 to him, and I was second in 2005 to him at the World Championship. And after that, those three matches, he became kind of the king of the hill as far as the World Championship. And Eric is like 50. I think he turned 50 this year, and he's still phenomenal. That damn guy's pretty phenomenal. He's won the last. I think he's won every World Championship since '99. I think he's won 10 now, 10 in a row. But I always give him an asterisk on number 99 in the Philippines. So
That's funny.
but yeah, and so no, Eric and I are friends, and I've kind of gotten over most all of those things along the way. So
Kind
but
of.
kind of, yeah, yeah, So but no, he is phenomenal. I mean, even at 50 years old, he's probably a better shooter today than he was in 1999 when he won the world championship. Then I know he's a better shot. So, but yeah, so we can. God Almighty, I mean, there's so many people that you could say that go along the way. Alan Fulford, who was a multinational champion in bullseye. There's guys along the way that I've met in different disciplines that I have unbelievable respect for because I know the time and effort that they put into it. So when you meet these guys, and I kind of know everybody in all the shooting sports. So I kind of being in the industry, we kind of cross paths, whether it be to a sponsor or someone who, or we're working on a project together. We meet somebody, or we're dealing with the NRA or NSSF or one of the other shooting sports. I'm on the advisory board for USA Shooting, so I'm meeting a lot of the new individuals that are popping up in USA Shooting. Plus, we got the Olympics going on in Paris this year, so hopefully we're going to put a good team together for a lot of our shotgun team. Looks really well on the women's side and the men's side, so we got a good chance of medaling in Paris this year. So if you're following following that world, go become a member of USA Shooting and support the Olympic side of that, because we're losing our rights for actual gunpowder version of the Olympic side. So they're going to laser tag now. I mean, I would say, let's see, we're in 2024, I say, 30-32, other than the shotgun shooting sports, we may not be even shooting a projectile that's being propelled by powder.
In the Olympics.
In the Olympics. Yeah. Yeah. In the Olympics. So
you're saying by 2032, you think?
That's my assessment of what I see is going on. Some of Europe is already using laser tag already. So put a rifle up, stick it on the target, pull the trigger, gun goes off, do all the fundamentals, boom, shot an X, a laser, boom, tells you that you shot a 10. So it's a sad situation that what we're seeing. I mean, as you well know, the politics in the U.S. and what's going on. I mean, we're in the cusp here of losing everything in the next 8 or 9 months.
It's a very scary time. I've spent years involved in the politics of firearms from an education and lobbying and fight for rights standpoint. And it seems like the degradation of society is at went from a 45-degree downward slope to fucking jumped off a cliff in the last year.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to say. I mean, there's some rumors of what Biden might do on the assault weapons side before he gets out of office. He could throw that out there. So, of course, it'd be a court battle over that. But in the meantime, you don't know what's going to happen. We had the Summer of Love in 2020, and we all know what happened there. I mean, what happened to gun sales? I mean, I think the numbers were 12.1 million guns sold or 4473 forms in 23. And we already in January numbers were already 1.3 million guns sold. So, I mean, we're on track to, to maybe break that record. Who
Yeah.
knows what's going to happen, between
It's
now and then.
scary times indeed.
So,
I really appreciate that you have so much knowledge that you're able to share it, and seems like you still have a fervor for all of this stuff. I won't name anybody, but there's guys 50 to 70 something years old, and some of them just are so fed up with this space and the people and the politics and the infighting and the bullshit. Like some of them, you don't even want to talk to them in this fashion because they'll just bring you down. So I appreciate that you've got a good attitude after 40 years of doing it. And thank you for your time. I know you've got a lot of stuff on your plate, and got a lot of opportunities. So I'll ask you this before we go. If doesn't have to do anything with shooting. If you never meet the people that we're talking to, if you never cross their paths, if they never shake your hand at SHOT Show or see you on the range, if they don't bump into you at a pub or a grocery store, what would you leave them with?
I will leave them with that we're in a period of time where if you want to be a player in the overall scheme of history, you need to learn how to shoot a gun. You need to be able to understand the politics in your local community, your state, and what's going on, because we are this close of losing all of our rights to be able to protect ourselves. I mean, I was with Tulsi Gabbard. I taught her how to shoot. Well, I didn't teach her how to shoot. I helped her out in a few areas out in Vegas at SHOT Show this year, and we were chatting away about politics and everything. I was going like, I don't like to be lied to by every politician I talk to. I said, but I hope you have a firm grasp after leaving this event or understanding how the American people are with firearms. I mean, I told her, I said, I fired over 6 million rounds in my life, and not but one time in my life, not but one time have I ever thought about pulling the trigger on someone. And and she kind of looked at me, and I was going like, yeah, I got carjacked one time, and I didn't have a gun. And what happened was, if I had a gun, I may have been able to put myself in a situation where I could have saved my life if that guy would have shot me. And and this was when I was 19 years old. It's the reason why I got into shooting when I was 19. And so I feel that if you own a firearm and you don't get your ass, take your gun out of your safe and go get some bullets and go practice, then you're not going to be able to protect yourself in the way you want to under a stress situation. And those stresses of potentially the summer of 2020 again coming about and knocking on your door, it seems to be getting bigger and bigger with all these millions of people crossing the border that we have no idea who's coming in our country and who's going to be kicking in your front door or your back door at the middle of the night. Do you understand how to use your gun? So go take a class, whether you take a class from somebody who is a pro, or if you take a class from somebody who is, an NRA instructor. You need to spend the extra time and go out there and do that. So I'll leave that with you, because if you don't know how to use a gun, then you may be taken away from you along the way and used on you or used on somebody in your family. So it's a situation where the older I get, the more I understand evil in this world. And there's a lot of evil that's in this world today, and it's getting worse. So, Mick, I appreciate you. I appreciate
Sobering,
you.
sobering stuff. I don't
Yeah,
disagree with any of it. I don't disagree with any of it. You guys that watched, listened, depending on where you're at, I hope you enjoyed it. One of the things I've sought to do on this podcast is share people like Todd with you. It's not that Todd needs me, but I have noticed in our classes, I will go through a list of names from Jim Cirillo to Cooper and modern people like you. And I'll say, who knows these guys? Who's attended courses with them or read articles that they've written or watched videos? And as time goes on, you become less relevant, right? When there's some sexy 25-year-old dude with a beard that came out of some special mission unit that's running around with 1 million YouTube followers, which doesn't diminish that guy's value. But
Correct.
it's the same thing that happened. I don't know who the hell the famous race car drivers were in the 1950s. I don't know who they are today, but like everybody kind of goes away. But this space is so unique in that the fucking way we hold pistols now, you and 20 other guys kind of sort it out. And the way that we reload the pistol, you and a handful of guys sort it out. So I think it's valuable for you guys, the listeners, to understand that, not just from a respect way, like, some Green Beret or Navy SEAL learned that shit and now he's teaching it, making a living because of Todd or a handful of other competitive dudes. And that's valuable to me from a respect standpoint, but also understanding that stuff gets watered down and diluted, or maybe something's misinterpreted. So go back to the well and see how that information came about. Go take a class with Todd, check out his videos and social media online. He likes to crack jokes on the range and keep it light, but get it done as well. And as always, be well. Don't be dickheads. Tell somebody you love them, and be willing to protect yourself and this republic. May it long endure. Peace out.
Visit our website, carrytrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@carrytrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@carrytrainer.com or carrytrainer.com. Oh, that's so nice and toasty. Chilly winter day. Hey, want to make sure that you guys know that this episode of the Higher Line podcast has been brought to you by Ignis Lux Coffee. Ignis Lux, Latin for firelight. A reminder to let your fire burn bright. We are only here but for a little while, and there's no sense in drinking crummy coffee when there's coffee like this available. Small batch roasted in fluid bed roasters. Check that out. Less than 1% of all the coffee in the world is done in fluid bed roasters. Why? Because it's more work, but it gives you a much better product. IgnisLuxCoffee.com. Roasted fresh, sent right to your door. Check it out.